Have you ever caught yourself saying, well, that's just the way it is? I know I have, and sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's one of the most dangerous phrases that we can believe. Because every time I stopped asking questions, I also stopped learning. And that's something I've become increasingly aware of over the last several years. When I was younger, I accepted a surprising number of ideas without ever investigating them. Now, this wasn't because I was lazy. It was because I never had a reason to question them. If an elder said it, I believed it. If I read it somewhere, I believed it. If everybody around me repeated it, I usually accepted it then too. And honestly, that's how most of us learn in the beginning. There's nothing unusual about it. But eventually, there comes a point where borrowed ideas have to become examined ideas. And that's when things started changing for me. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I had a teacher who told me that my hair was brown. Not sure how we got to that point in the conversation. We were in a classroom. Not sure how it got there, but she told me that my hair was brown, and I told her my hair was black, and she didn't like the fact that I told her that. I guess she thought it was being disrespectful or I'm not listening to her. But she was under the impression that black people had really dark brown hair. It's not really black. The people who had black hair were like Indians from India or um, Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. That's black hair. But black people don't have black hair. It's just actually a really, really dark brown. And she believed that. And I told her, I said, well, some black people do have brown hair. I've seen it. They have light brown hair. They have dark brown hair. I've seen black people who have almost blonde hair. But my hair's black. And I couldn't accept that. She was older. She was an elder. She was the teacher. But it just didn't sit right with me because I knew better, thought better, and I looked it up myself. She didn't like that very much. But if I had just accepted that as face value, I'd be running around today um, telling people, black people, that they don't have black hair. It's really actually dark, dark brown, which is true in some cases, but not true in all cases. One unexpected thing or benefit of building Black Logic Media for me is that it forced me to slow down. I couldn't just repeat things because they sounded good or because I heard them 100 times. I had to start asking questions. Where did this come from? Who actually said this? What's the original source? What evidence supports this? And I was surprised by how often those questions completely changed my understanding. Sometimes I discovered that an idea was much stronger than I thought. Other times, I discovered it wasn't true at all. Here's a question for you. Is there anything that you believed for a long time, maybe since you were a child, and then found out that it wasn't true? If so, leave it in the comment section. I'd be interested in hearing about that. I realize that there's a huge difference between repeating information and understanding it. We've all met people who can repeat facts They can spit it out. It's like somebody who can repeat Bible verses. They can quote scripture up, down, forward, backward. Got one for everything. Statistics, quotes, talking points. But if you ask one more question, how do you know that's true? Sometimes the conversation just stops. And that made me realize something uncomfortable. There were areas of my own life where I could repeat information that I never really investigated. And that was a humbling discovery. Imagine using a language app to learn a new language. And as often is the case in learning, you learn through repetition. So you use this language app, you're learning a new language through repetition, and then later on, you find out that what you learned was wrong. I mean, imagine if before you found that out, you actually even argued with people about what this word means or how you say something. Imagine even worse if you had an argument with a native speaker who spoke that language and you're telling them how it's really supposed to be said, or what really is the correct word or pronunciation. I mean, it was the app that gave you the wrong information and you repeated it over and over and over again and you thought it was true. Imagine how it would feel if you found out it wasn't true and that you were adamant about something that was just dead wrong. That's why, like, I need to learn Spanish. For years, I've been learning here and there, but that's why I love talking to people who speak Spanish and getting insights from them. A side note, it's not just the language, it's the way, it's the thinking behind it. I don't know if you notice this or not, but the English language is kind of backwards in comparison. Like in Germany, when I lived in Germany, you know, listening to the language, they would, if you translated it, literally it would be like, they would say, like, to the store I go. And in English, you would say, I go to the store. That sounds simple at first. It's just a minor thing, but it's literally a different way of thinking. So when we deal with people who speak different languages, we have to remember that it's not only just the words. Sometimes it's the pattern of thinking. I think that's very interesting. I went off on a tangent there, but I think that's interesting. But one habit that I've developed is asking more questions than I used to. Like if I read an article, I'll ask, where did they get that information? If someone quotes a statistic, I'll ask, what's the original study? If I hear a historical claim, I'll ask, what's the primary source? And I'm not trying to become skeptical of everything. I'm just trying to become careful. And those aren't the same thing. And here's something that I hadn't thought about before. Asking questions is actually a form of respect. It's saying the idea is important enough for me to understand it correctly. And that's different from arguing. It's different from criticizing. It's different from trying to win. Curiosity isn't looking for reasons to reject an idea. It's looking for reasons to understand it. And I think that's one of the healthiest habits that we can develop. The more I thought about this, the more I realized that life is a lot like building a house. If the foundation isn't solid, it doesn't matter how beautiful the house looks. Eventually, something starts cracking. And our beliefs worked exactly the same way. The stronger the foundation, the stronger everything built on top of it becomes. And that's why I spend so much time talking about foundation, because foundations determine futures. And as a side note, when I think about foundations, one thing about a foundation is you have to dig first. You notice that no one ever just finds a flat piece of land and just starts building on top of it. They always dig first and lay the foundation. Interesting. What are your thoughts on that right there? But here's something that I would encourage you to do this week. Pick one belief that you hold with a lot of confidence. Not because you're trying to prove yourself wrong, but because you're trying to understand it more deeply. Now, ask yourself, why do I believe this? And then ask, what's the strongest evidence supporting it? Now, you may end up believing exactly the same thing, but now you'll believe it for better reasons. And that's growth. And a word of warning about that is that sometimes our beliefs are tied to our identity. Sometimes the things that we believe are tied to our identity. Sometimes we can't improve or grow or clarify our beliefs because it's an essential part of who you are. And there's this fear that if I challenge it or I investigate it, that it may destroy who I am. So just a word of warning before you do that exercise. But I would encourage you to do it. It's a great thinking exercise. But here's what I've come to believe. I've come to believe that one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is the courage to remain curious. Not cynical, but curious. Because curiosity keeps us moving, keeps us learning, keeps us growing. And maybe most importantly, it keeps us humble enough to let reality continue to teach us. Thanks for spending a little time with me. I'll see you in the next conversation.